such a time as this.
And welcome to For Such a Time as This round table. Useful idiots. American youth favor Karl Marx over freedom. I have in studio tonight, I have Sir Ben and Miss Lisajoy. We are going to talk about useful little idiots, and we say that in an endearing way. As Mao Zedong would say to you Americans from his grave who are pushing socialism, thank you, you useful little idiots. As always, if you would go to our webpage, for such a time as this .today, for such a time as this .today, not .com, not .org, .today. For such a time as this .today, there you can find our newest material and always be caught up with what's going on here, because I'll just be honest with you, I'm not sure we will be able to stay on a lot of platforms, especially speaking about topics like this, because the spirit of Mao Zedong, I do believe, is in some of the leadership in the platforms. But if you go to For Such a Time as This .today, you will always be able to catch up with our newest materials. Useful idiots. How are we doing, Ben, Lisajoy, before we get to our first video?
Doing quite well. How you guys doing tonight?
Trying to stay warm.
Trying to stay warm. We're in the
cold day.
Republic of Chicago. What was the high today? 12?
I think it got around like
20s in the 20s, but yeah.
It's been very cold the last few days.
At night it's been a negative.
We're happy it got up to 20. People down south would be crying if it was 20. They shut down the whole city.
Well,
if it got down there, but
they can't handle it.
No, we can't. I'll agree with you. They can't. Can't do it. But the useful idiots. Here's our first video. This is sad. When you have to have a representative of the House, of the U.S. House, introduce and say things like this. Look at this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in support of the rule to bring up to the House concurrent resolution number 9, denouncing the horrors of socialism. And why am I bringing this resolution to the floor of the United States House of Representatives? Because young people in America are being brainwashed by the news media and academia into believing that socialism is an economic model for the greater good of all Americans. And the problem is that they are falling for it. They're believing it. And here's the proof. Almost 40% of Gen Z and millennials think the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx, the father of Marxism, is a better defense of freedom and equality than the Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, one of the creators of the American experiment, the American exceptionality, and the document which gave birth to the most prosperous and resilient democracy in the history of the world, ours, the United States of America. Worse yet, in a recent poll that shows that 40% of Americans of all ages, not only the youth, 40% believe that socialism is good, while 33% of them say that they are likely to support a member of the Democratic Socialist of America, the organization that has shaped the ideology of many of our colleagues with the poison of neo-Marxism. If you
Yeah.
She even said it has shaped the thinking of many of our colleagues. She's talking about the Democrats on the other side of the aisle.
I just want to read out the resolution so people get a context of it. So this resolution outlines several historical examples of the greatest crimes and tragedies of socialism and why such a system goes against the founding principles of our great nation. It specifically highlights examples of the Soviet Union, China, Cambodia, North Korea, Cuba, and Venezuela. Through this resolution, the House of Representatives denounce socialism in all of its forms and opposes the implementation of socialist policies in the United States of America. And then it goes on in more and more detail. So I just found this video caught my eye, and what troubled me the most was how in the world we're at the point that 40% of all ages within America support this ideology. I did not know that.
Oh.
I did not. I didn't think it was that big.
We're going to get into critical theory and then critical race theory. They're teaching these kids that's what it is.
Right.
They're teaching Marxism here, and it's just it is sad.
It is very sad.
It is very, very amazingly sad.
You know, one of my friends, we were talking about our children and the times in which they grew up, and her son is a little bit younger than my son, and they were having some discussion maybe within the last few years about Karl Marx. And he said to his mom, well, have you ever read the the manifesto?
Yes.
And she said, no, I haven't. He said, she goes, well, I'll agree to read that if we can read it alongside of Romans. So they started reading through it because he was a big Bernie Sanders supplement, supporter. And halfway through, she said, we started, and she said, I had never read it. And I don't think, obviously, Pastor, you're saying, yes, you read it. Did you read the Karl Marx?
Yeah, I've read a lot of excerpts.
We never had to read it.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about it.
We're going to read a little bit tonight.
Okay, because I think a lot of people would be shocked.
Yep.
Because when you read it, you go, they're going to get rid of, they're against God. They're against the family.
The whole system is based on. And you know what? I want to say this. We're using new streamware. Our streamware had us update something, and on YouTube it's saying that something is not right and that maybe you may have problems buffering. I don't know if that's true for those of you on YouTube, but if you are, I've put the link to Rumble. I'll link to Rumble. Rumble seems to be having no issues at all, but if you're having issues on YouTube, if you look down in the chat, there is a link there to Rumble. But yes, the Communist Manifesto is anti-God at its core.
Have you ever heard too? There was a book, I've never read it, and someone recommended it to me, that Marxism itself is rooted in Satanism. And again, I don't know much about Satanism, and that was a book title. He's like, you need to read this. I haven't read it, but I was like, have you ever heard of that too? I know it's anti-God, but I've never heard of that Marxism was rooted in Satanism until someone recommended it.
Marx was crazy.
Yeah, because he wasn't a believer.
A believer. He was a very immoral man.
Right.
A believer. But here's what I want to do. Let's just read, and this is just the beginning of it. Okay, the beginning of the Declaration of Independence, and then we're going to read the start of the Communist Manifesto.
Okay, that sounds good.
So here we go. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by you know the thing. Well, anyway, but they are endowed by their Creator to certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the beginning of the Declaration of Independence.
Did you hear one of our officials they left out life? Did you hear that one? Kamala Harris. She did the pursuit. Oh yeah, it was at a pro-abortion talk. They left life out.
Oh really?
Yeah, you didn't see that. I'm surprised. She left out life. She said liberty and the pursuit of.
I don't know if she did that on purpose.
I think she did. I think she did. I'm like, I can't imagine.
I think you're giving her a lot more
credit. That's what everyone else was saying too. But no, but someone might have put it together for her too.
Yeah, you're right. And she just read it. So before we get into the Communist Manifesto, I ran across this good clip with Brian Kilmeade, I believe, from Fox News. No issues. Thank you, Laura. No issues. You sound great. Good. But let me play this because they have effectively, when I say they, those who hate our country and has gone about reorganizing it. They've done a very good job in attacking our school systems. Mm-hmm. Here's one clip that explains the issue.
Welcome back. If there's one thing history has shown us, it's that ideas have consequences. Abraham Lincoln once said, "The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation becomes the philosophy of government in the next." Wise words from a Republican president who saved our republic and emancipated the slaves. With men like Abraham Lincoln setting the philosophy of the schoolroom, our nation would be in good hands. But in the wrong hands, that same phrase is downright scary. Consider this quote from the founder of Soviet Russia, Marxist and communist revolutionary Vladimir Lenin. He said, "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." Which worldview? American republicanism, small r, or Soviet Marxism, do you think is more in control of America's classrooms today? Not just in universities, but in our K through 12 classrooms, our youngest. Thanks to radical textbooks and atheist Marxist theories from long ago, and some from not so long ago, the answer today is scary. It's dangerous. Our educational industrial complex, that's one way to put it, is pumping out these radical anti-American, anti-Western, and anti-Christian theories into the minds of our youngest kids faster than we can catch up.
Wow.
Sadly, I think it's true.
Well, Pastor James, when in the school systems in Louisiana, when you were growing up, was there any hint or scent of Marxism in the schools, like books and propaganda, or what was it that like?
You know, I've thought about that. I've gone back and back in my mind. Now remember, you're talking about the 70s.
That's when
You're talking about the South,
in Louisiana.
No, I don't remember it at all. Maybe it was there and it went over my head, but I was not there. I can tell you now, in the 80s, in high school, it was not there. See, I went to Catholic high school, and I remember Father Coffee. Oh, I remember to this day. And remember, he's teaching. He's a white old Italian teaching at an all black male school. And I remember freshman year, in English class, Father Coffee, he said, "Doggone politicians, you think that you just throw money at the problem. The problem is moral." He said, "Democrats throw money at a dead horse and expect for it to resurrect."
Oh, wow.
He said that. I'm like, oh,
wow.
This man, he don't know where he is.
Wow.
I've come to respect Father Coffee because he did that. But even back then, remember, people got to realize, even today, when the United States, when the bill that went up to the United States Supreme Court, when they struck down that heartbeat bill at 20 weeks, well, 2 years ago, that was from Louisiana. And a Democrat governor signed that.
Wow.
The Democrats from Louisiana are more conservative than the Republicans in Illinois.
It's true.
Oh, that's easy, though.
Huh?
That's easy. It's not saying much. I'm so disgusted with them.
But I'm just saying the culture is a lot more conservative than up here. So no, they didn't do that. And I mean, we grew up saying the South shall rise again.
Yeah.
Okay, so, no, I had no. We love the country.
Yeah, because I always find it odd that, like, even, like, growing up here in the school systems, like, in the 90s and early 2000s, like, I mostly encountered liberals, like, all because they didn't know.
You too, Lisajoy?
You know what? I had to sit and think about some things. There were things that I look back at. I don't know about history because I was never interested in U.S. history.
I loved it.
I hated it. And I had a world history teacher. Do you know what I remember about world history even? We watched Ben-Hur.
Really?
The whole thing.
Really?
The original Ben-Hur movie was given to us in world history.
Huh.
Can you imagine? That would never happen nowadays.
No.
But and I was thinking about U.S. history and stuff. I don't remember some of that. I do remember things in English class and things that I look at now and I go, oh my gosh. Like the whole lifeboat thing. You know.
No.
What is that?
Oh, you don't know? So back in the 80s, they would do things like lifeboat or bomb shelter, and they would give you this scenario. And they'd say you have room for so many people.
Oh.
And here's the number of people. And this, we have the handicap, this, all this, the black, you know, who's going to live and who's going to die. You had to make the decision. What it did is put value on human life. And this is, and it would make people value one person over another, and put you as a high schooler in the judgment of this, which problematic.
It's very problematic.
But it was always English classes, and English classes. In fact, I remember watching the movie Cool Hand Luke, which
English class, literature, huh?
literature class, because it was character present. You know, I'm like. But I don't know about history. I can't remember.
I'm curious. I think, Lori, I think you're in Tennessee. Did y'all have that in Tennessee or other people? Because I think each part of the country was different.
Yeah, that's what it seems
you
like.
people up north.
Yeah.
Man, you guys been hating America for a long time.
I remember in high school, they were like, explain the position why it was wrong for the Europeans to come over here and get rid of the Native Americans. And they like explain why that's morally wrong. And that's like, well, what happens if you don't, from your European standpoint, why don't you think that wasn't morally wrong? Like, they never really considered the other side. Yeah. They always talk about one side, and then
Well, they've been revising history.
Yeah, we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about the gentleman that they held up. Here's the next clip about educating. The reason why our children are embracing socialism, communism, which at the root of its philosophy is Marxism. And again, as our title is Useful Idiots, I think Mao Zedong, his thing was useful little idiots, because they would impress so much upon the youth. Kilmy does a really good job at Fox News. Here's the second clip.
I believe that we are the country that has done more good for humanity than any other in history. What would you say on a report card? We have done more bad than good? We're in the middle, or what?
Probably more bad than good. If you look at the way we have used our armed force throughout our history, first destroying the Indian communities of this continent, then going into the Caribbean and the Spanish-American War, taking over other countries. What bothers me most today is that people use World War II as an example for what we should do today.
No, we use it as an example of where war is the moral choice. Are you prepared to say that war is ever the best moral choice?
No, not today.
Never.
No,
not even against Hitler.
Well, I'm not sure about World War II.
Wow.
That was the voice of an American who dedicated his life to smearing the good name of his country. Howard Zinn, a so-called democratic socialist, enslaved the minds of disenchanted young Americans through the art of deception. His book, A People's History of the United States, portrays America as a fundamentally immoral and racist country. It's American history written from the Soviet perspective, a country he openly defended. To Howard Zinn, utopia could never be achieved as long as America was in the way. Most Americans have probably never heard his name, but he is responsible for creating the highest-selling textbook in our country's history. Just 4 decades after publication, his once radical ideas have become the gospel of modern progressives. And they will not stop until every American student worships a man who sought America's destruction.
That's how they do it.
You know what makes me really angry? And my dad would always bring this up when we talk about communists and socialists growing up. He said, even with Howard Zinn, it's like he's profiting off a capitalist society
Correct.
with a socialist ideology, and so hypocritical. He's selling book.
Mm-hmm.
He should not take those profits then.
Yeah. No. They don't think that way.
It's a contradiction.
Bernie Sanders, who has several houses and just came out with a new book, decries capitalism as he makes money off the capitalistic system. Ben, you can't confuse. Don't use logic with these people. You can't use logic with these people.
Now, where was he born? He was obviously an American.
Zen. You know what? It's a good question. I don't know.
Because I'm looking
where
this
exactly.
up. I'm like, okay.
You could probably find it on Wikipedia.
Yeah. He passed away in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So
wow,
he
it's been a
was
while.
1922. He was born. I'm trying to see where he was.
If you go down there, it says born.
New York City.
Yeah, which is a very
Yeah.
liberal place.
And he died in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
Santa Monica.
Have you read any of his stuff? Pastor?
I've never read
I'm not even sure what his book is. He says it's the number one book.
It said the history of it was People's History of the United States in 1980.
I don't think we had that book in Louisiana.
No, I don't think that was used in our high school either.
Here's what Laura said. Laura said, in Texas upbringing, 7th grade American history teacher was my favorite teacher, she says. She would sit for an hour telling a very romantic view of Indians and how we treated them as a country. That was in 1973, and my teacher was very young. Yeah, the Indians had their own issues. Mm-hmm. And you're right. What they do is they paint the American Indian, as angels living here on heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The only problem is those angels had that peyote and would commune and would go high and would get high up in the cloud with the angels.
Weren't they did some witchcraft and idolatry?
Yeah, they did a lot of. I mean, when you get to the point where you are out of your mind, you do a lot of horrible things. And then again, the Indians warred amongst themselves, and they did some very terrible things among themselves. Not to say that we as the American country did not do some horrible things to them, okay? But don't act like they're a bunch of angels that were just slaughtered,
You guys, have you seen that movie that Kirk Cameron came out of called Monumental?
No.
That's worth seeing because I'm like, he traces the people, the pilgrims that actually, and where they were before they got to the U.S., trying to find religious freedom.
Yep.
And most of them died trying to get here. And he paints a different story of things that we never learned in our history book. And where Plymouth Rock is, there is a huge monument. And they've never when I saw that movie, I'm like, I have never seen that monument. And it was put up with these pillars that are the basis of our law, our all these things.
That was a very Christian one. They're talking about how
yes.
That's why they don't show it.
That's why they don't show it. I know, but in the same thing in Gettysburg, there's a monument that obviously the people that put that up knew about the one in Plymouth, and it's a little bit different. So, I mean, I just go, there's so much that we either haven't been told or has been revised.
Let me read the beginning of the Communist Manifesto, right? Just a little bit of it. Just a little bit. Chapter 1, the bourgeoisie and the proletarians. The history, here is the Communist Manifesto. The history of all hitherto existing societies is a history of class struggles. Already. Freeman and slave, patrician and plebeian, that's the Roman reference, lord and serf, guild and master and journeyman. In a word, oppressor and oppressed stood in constant opposition to one another, carried on in an uninterpreted, now hidden, now open fight, a fight that each time ended either in a revolutionary reconstitution of society at large or in the common ruin of the contending classes. There you go. He starts off the whole thing of this struggle. Here are, most people don't know, here are the The demands of communism. Here are the high points of communism. Abolishing ownership at all private property. Establishing systems of heavy taxations. Abolishing the right to inherit. Centralizing credit and establishment of a state bank. The government runs everything. Centralizing communication and transportation with the state. Well, that's going on right now. The FBI is telling all these social platforms they can and can't say.
Yes.
That is one of the hallmarks of Marxists. Confiscating all immigrant and rebel property. Right? So if you rebel against the state, whatever. Confiscation, extending the means of production to the state. The state tells you what you can and cannot make. Equalizing liability to all levels of labor. I have to look into that one. Combining agricultural and manufacturing industries. And establishing a free public education system. Why? So that you can tell the useful little idiots what to think. Mm-hmm. That's all tenets of Marxism. Now, here's the scary thing. How much of that stuff we're doing already?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How close are we to socialism and Marxism?
Sounds like we're pretty close. Canada's far gone.
Yeah, Canada's there.
When I think about Canada,
there.
it's like, wow, we're becoming just like Canada.
Yeah, but there is one thing that we can say that we got that Canada doesn't have, that we have, that the rest of the world doesn't have. And I'm reminded by our Venezuelan friends and our friends outside of America. There's one thing we have that everybody doesn't have. That's the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. That is the one thing we can fall upon. But
we lose that, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, that's why they're going after it. They've had a tough time getting that Second Amendment, but they trying. Here in Illinois, the governor and the House, which the Democrats have supermajorities in both houses, they passed something that they know darn well is unconstitutional, but they passed it anyway, trying to drive people out of business. But anyway, here's what they do. Here's what the thought process is with Marxists, to upend all society, and here's how they do it. Here's the next clip.
In fact, in the 1960s, America was ripe yet again for another philosophy to advance the agenda the progressives started. The path was paved for another infiltration of America's classroom.
In the early 1900s, there was something called the Frankfurt School out of Germany. Many of the scholars in the Frankfurt School escaped Nazi Germany. They came to America and they settled in the Columbia Teachers College. What was the Frankfurt School doing? Well, the Frankfurt School was pushing Marxist ideology called critical theory. Sound familiar? And at that point, our teachers in that teacher college started the indoctrination process into Marxist ideology. Several years later, estimates showed that about 1/3 of our principals and superintendents in large city school districts had been trained in the Columbia Teachers College.
For the progressives, critical theory became the ultimate weapon to wield against the Western Christian paideia.
Critical theory says that basically in order for people to understand the truth, they need to make everything that's currently familiar seem strange.
Wow.
Yep. It's the education system. It's the public school system by which they flipped the mindset of American youth from the Declaration of Independence.
You know what?
The Communist Manifesto.
To like, it reminds me of like when America was a Puritan society in the very beginning, but when other ideas started coming in the education system, it started to pervert, like the Harvard, the Yales, when it would raise up ministers. It's just these communist ideologies infect the country, and it's poison, and then it poisons others. And now you don't recognize the people you go to school with, you know, and they become these teachers, and you're like, what are they even teaching? With
Marxism, that's what they're teaching.
Exactly, and it's like you used to eat with these people, run with these people, hang out with these people. Now when you see them, they treat you as monsters because you're not familiar to them anymore. You are someone who's foreign, and that's just so sad. It makes you. They paint you as a monster because you're like, oh, you're a Christian. You're probably a white supremacist.
Yep.
That assumption is so dangerous. I mean, oh my
Well, they're
goodness.
doing that right now with that whole thing in Memphis.
What do you mean, Lisajoy? How the 5 black men are racist?
Well, but did you know that when did that happen? Think about when that happened.
When did it happen?
3 weeks ago?
It happened on January 8th. But they didn't bring that out until that whole thing about Pfizer came out.
Oh.
Did you notice that?
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
didn't notice that.
don't look over here, and then we're going to say this was actually racist motivated. How is that white supremacy and white racism?
This is their argument. They claim because
5 black.
They claim the police force as an institution is racist and raised up these black people to become racist.
Police are talking out though because those people I think were planted there, and they said there were complaints about all of them.
But how do we even get to a point like that?
Yeah, that people listen to it.
Just think about this. How can a society get so far down the road? The 5 men initially, I know there's more afterwards, but the 5 men initially, they're black.
Yes.
The police chief,
Black. Mayor,
and guess what color the mayor is?
black.
Black.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How on
Every
earth?
one of them. All the whole authority system is black.
Do you have to suspend all type of logic and critical thinking? Well, the system is white. Well, tell me what system is white? You mean the system that says criminals shouldn't steal and murderers shouldn't murder? What exactly is the white system? You see, and nobody can say that.
No one can give specifics.
It doesn't make sense.
And I would ask a challenger. I'm like, what? It didn't seem like they followed police protocol or the procedures or training to arrest someone.
They're thugs.
They're thugs. You punch, you kick people in the face.
Useful little idiots.
Yes.
Are trained.
Yep.
Like dogs who are listening to Pavlov's whistle.
Yep.
When
Check
you say
your brains
racism,
at the door.
That's it. And I am convinced that in order to embrace socialism and in order to embrace Marxism, if you read Marx and if you read all of these quote unquote great philosophers, they were idiots to me. Yeah. If you read them, they contradict themselves constantly. And think about this. You literally have to suspend all logic to be a useful little idiot, right? You've got to listen to people who tell you that humans have to reduce their carbon footprint as they fly to the conferences on their private jets.
Yeah.
See, you got to, in order to be a useful idiot, you literally have to suspend all critical thinking.
And I really do believe these people who hold to these ideologies have the most miserable lives. For example, one of those philosophers, Friedrich Nietzsche from Germany, who believed, he said God was dead. He died of syphilis. He died of his own idea. I mean, he denied God's existence and he lived an immoral life.
I think Marx struggled too. I think Nietzsche committed suicide too, though, didn't he?
Probably, because definitely has syphilis.
They were all immoral men.
Immoral men.
They were immoral men. Marx was an immoral man.
All of them are.
Yeah, I could go some other places, but I'm not. But again, how do you become such a useful idiot?
I don't.
A useful little idiot. It is impossible to embrace the God of truth and to embrace socialism at the same time. You can't do it.
You cannot.
Absolutely cannot do it.
And I mean, I can get up. I don't know if you guys know what Reddit is, but I go on there to get a pulse of what liberals are talking about. And there's subreddits for each topic, and most of them are Marxist on there because they have Marxist names. They have names that are like 666. They do that in mockery of Christ, but even though they're not, they claim they're not Satanists. But when you read, I'm really, when I read these people's comments, they are so bitter, so depressed, have awful lives, have violence in their lives, immoral lives, and then they say that you read comments and say, screw the Christians. We have to take everything from the Christians.
But Ben, help us out. How did your generation get full of useful little idiots? How did that process take place? I mean, is it the schools? I mean,
no, I think it's a combination of factors. I think it's the parents,
Breakdown of family,
the schools,
mm-hmm.
the video games.
How did the parents do that?
Okay, so I knew a lot of kids growing up in school, and their parents just did not care, did not raise them, and if they did, they raised them the wrong way because they
let them do whatever they wanted. Do
whatever they wanted, and get these games that taught so much violence. You know, your brain's developing at such a young age. You're gonna get a game where you're killing people on the street with no intentions of just walking around the street. That's called Grand Theft Auto. You do drugs on the street, shoot someone in the head.
I thought Grand Theft Auto was you stealing cars.
No, you also kill people. And you get with prostitutes in the
Grand
game
Theft Auto?
in Grand Theft Auto.
You know, when my kids were in junior high, there was junior high or grade school. We had a specialist come in, and he had been one of these people that had military background and had gone into every single major school shooting. And he said, and he came in and he talked about how all of these school shooters were kids that were antisocial.
Yes.
They played video games. They had never, as far as I can remember, none of them had actually shot a real firearm until this whole thing came about. But he said they did brain scans of different kids that were doing these like games and stuff, and how the chemistry and the brain scans changed. And he said, we can change that back, but the community has to be involved. And he spread out this program. And I remember, this is Arlington Heights, okay? And I'm standing next to the principal from one of the Lutheran schools. And he was showing a program that has been shown to lower the violence and help communities be better. And they were going to sell it to the school board for less than $200. You can copy this. And I looked, and it talked about shutting TVs off and everything like that. And I looked at the principal from the Lutheran school, and I go,
look at that.
They will never do this. Yeah. And he said, why? I said, because our parents will not give up their TVs and turn off the TVs. Our parents won't do it. And, you know, they never heard from that guy again. It never got infiltrated. I thought less than $200. And look at how much the school districts are paying. And I decided at a very early age, I'm like, we're not going to have TV. We didn't have TV. And I'm like, you know, you can do what you need to do for your kids, but you have people around you that aren't going to, and that affects your community.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's through the educational system.
Yep.
And all the stuff that they push towards our youth. It just makes them very, very useful little idiots. When you take away all the moral standards and all the self-restraints and the discipline, boy, you create little thugs and ruffians.
And I can't think of one person through the public school system growing up that was a Christian or believer. I cannot think of any family, any one name to this day that was a believer in Christ, and that is tragic. Because I'm serious. In the school systems, when I went to high school and middle school, I didn't know anyone who was like a true believer in Christ. So I just remember my dad was just, don't hang out with those people. He would always say, the Chinese saying, tiger don't run with deer. And he would say that because you said, he said, Ben, don't hang out with those people. Yeah. Those people are really bad.
Now, what years did you graduate from high school in what year?
In 2010. So
okay, so I graduated from high school in the 80s, and I think back then, and this is a big change, back in the 80s, I could tell you within our few towns, the evangelical churches all band together and we had outreaches in the high school.
Wow.
So we would bring in special things.
Good luck with that nowadays.
You can't. They have stopped. You can't. We had student-led groups. We had people from Campus Life that would come in. We had Bible studies. We had kids, and I knew who the Christian kids were. Didn't mean that it always worked out so great, but I can remember all of our churches, the very churches that won't stand now, doing things together, and we knew the Christians in other schools.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that would never happen today.
Yeah.
No.
So let's wrap this up. What good news do we have for these useful little people?
I mean, the good news for them is that they can still repent and turn to Christ. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know.
I think prayer, I'm going to go back to what I've said earlier. In prayer meeting prayer is our most powerful tool.
Yes.
Because it preempts our courage, our voices, our conviction. I mean, it's the thing that pushes all those things forth and gives God's Spirit a chance to work in us and through us.
Amen. Amen. Exactly.
We have hope.
We do.
I think the issue for our country is the same the only hope we have for our country is the only hope we have for the youth in our country. And that it is at some point as a nation we have to repent of our national sins. Go ahead, Ben.
If they can capture the churches, they can capture the heart of this nation.
Yeah, and I think they've done a really, really good job. I mean, if you look at it, a lot of quote unquote youth ministries for many, many years that I've seen, at least in this area, was nothing but babysitting time. And no self-restraining, self-discipline was never at the core of most, I can't say all, but most youth groups. It was more entertainment.
Wow.
Right? And it was to build up the youth and tell them what to do, they could soar with eagles and all the other stuff and really pump them up. But never their responsibility before holy God for most youth ministries, and it translated, right? It translated into the schools. That's what the schools are, right? A lot of times, parents do what the kids want. Oh my goodness! Growing up, and I remember Mike Huckabee said this, and when he was running, he's like, in the South, we had a saying: children have a problem. They're children. They need parents to lead them and to guide them and discipline them. And so, but yeah,
Pastor, like really quick, like in black churches, like did they with their youth ministries? Are they kind of like, was it kind of like the same like here?
I don't know. Youth ministry. I don't even think we had youth ministry in the 70s.
Really?
I never had a youth pastor.
Oh wow.
Grew up in the church, never had a youth pastor.
We had a really good youth group.
I think my sister in the 80s, they started to get more into youth stuff.
Got it.
More into youth stuff, but I never, no.
Yeah, because a lot of the youth ministries here is like just watch a movie and go to bowling, but never really talk about the Word of God. Or
we had Sunday school, we had Bible study, we had we had a lot of that.
No, we wasn't that good. we ain't had none of that stuff. But all right, thank you all for watching us, listening in to us, and again, pray for the youth so that Mousy Tong and Stalin and those guys don't continue, and Lenin don't continue to call the youth here in America by their favorite little names from the grave. You useful little idiots. Turn to God, repent. And let's pray for our country. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.